by raising your hand this morning. All right? Facebook, it's one of those things that is hard to comprehend. If you're not on Facebook, and it's totally okay not to be, but here are some stats about the website. There are more than 300 million active users of Facebook. The fastest growing demographic is those 35 years old and older. The average user on Facebook has 130 friends on the site. And my mom has a Facebook, and she has 15 friends. So some of you guys are bringing that average up. There are more than 45 million status updates every day. Each week, there are 2 billion pieces of content shared, whether it be photos or blog posts or notes or whatever it might be. And this is the one that got me the most. More than 8 billion minutes are spent on Facebook every day. 8 billion minutes every day. Having recently moved over 600 miles, Facebook is a great thing. We're able to post photos for our family and our friends to see, and we can put in our status updates, and so they can kind of see what we're up to, and we can do the same for them back home. We can look at their status updates and their photos, and we can see what they're up to. So to some degree, we can keep up with our personal relationships through Facebook. But the thing with Facebook is, when you talk about most of your friends on Facebook, you have to use quotes around the word friends. Because who really has 883, make that 884 friends? Who really has that many friends? The crazy thing about Facebook is that it provides us this avenue, these pseudo connections that we make on Facebook. We connect with people that we would never interact with in any other way. The guy that you sat next to in kindergarten, the girl you had a crush on in junior high, your old boyfriend or your old girlfriend, your junior high choir teacher. I'm friends with my junior high choir teacher. In fact, I'm in a group called We Love Sherry Porterfield. See if there we go. Facebook is to some degree, it's about relationships and making meaningful connections. And to a greater degree, it's about satisfying our curiosity. Knowing what people are up to without really knowing them. The point is that we crave connection with other human beings, yet we often stop short of building deep personal connections. We have hundreds of interactions with people every day, yet how many of those just remain at the surface level? So the question for us this morning is, who have you given refrigerator privileges to in your life? Who have you given refrigerator privileges to in your life? Do you know what I'm talking about here this morning? When Amanda and I were newly married, and we were fresh out of college, and we just gotten into the ministry, and I was a youth pastor in Indiana, and we would have people over at our house all the time. We would have students over to our house. And you know what you do when you have people over your house. You do the good host kinds of things. You clean the house from top to bottom. You put out those guest towels that nobody's really sure where they go or where they come from, but they're just there. And you know that you can't touch them any other time. You light the candles that are on the shelf and make it smell all nice inside. You set the table and you fill the glasses with ice and you get things ready. And then my favorite is you get a laundry basket and you get all the junk that you don't know what to do with, and you put it in the back bedroom. Now, we didn't do all that stuff when we had students over, except for the laundry basket part, but that's what a good host would do. You know what I'm talking about? I think for many of those reasons, my parents hardly ever had anybody over when I was growing up. They didn't like to do all those good host things. I can count on one hand the number of times I remember having people over to our house that weren't family members. They didn't like to do all those things that it takes to be a good host. But once you've had people over a couple of times, you get more comfortable with them, and they start to get more comfortable with you. And you don't vacuum every time that they come over, and you don't stash away the junk every single time that they come over. So there's really several different levels of relationship here. There are those that you give drink privileges to. You know the first time you go to somebody's house for dinner, and they have the table all set, and they have the drinks, and they fill the cups with ice, and they give you the drink menu. You want lemonade or tea or coffee or water. And, if they're a really good host, then halfway through dinner, then they'll ask you, hey, can I get you something else to drink? And if you're like me, because you're not comfortable immediately, most people aren't at somewhere new, somebody else's house, then you lie through your teeth and you just smile and say, no thanks, I'm good. You start to get more comfortable. Drink privileges. We had this when we had students over at our house all the time, our first youth ministry. We got to this point with students where Amanda would say, you know where the glasses are, you know where the ice is, and you know where we keep the Kool-Aid. So, have at it. That was kind of the rule at our house. We always had things on hand, and they knew that they could just come in and have at it. So there are drink privileges. But then there are another level here. There are those that you give refrigerator privileges to. Now, a refrigerator is like the inner sanctum of the house. You don't just allow anybody to go rifling through your refrigerator. You have to be selective. You have to use discernment in who you give those privileges to. There are levels of relationship here. And you ever have somebody, when I was growing up, we had a couple of friends, we would go to their house, and we know that we could always raid their pantry, we could always raid their refrigerator. You don't do that when you're not comfortable being at somebody's house. You don't just walk in and do that. There are levels of relationship. There are drink privileges, and then there are refrigerator privileges. And we're not even going to get into what I term remote control privileges. That's just too deep a part of my psyche to reveal this morning. We were created for relationship. Way back there in the beginning, when God was doing his creating work, and we see that he created man last, and even after he had created man, as my wife Amanda would like to point out, something was still missing. Genesis 2:18. I'm going to be reading from the New Living Translation this morning. Genesis 2:18. Then the Lord God said, "It is not good for man to be alone. I will make a helper who is just right for him." And so God created woman from man, and to be in relationship, to live together in relationship. It's not good for us to be alone. God created us for a relationship with him, but he also created us for a relationship with others. Let's look at Adam's response here this morning. Genesis 2:23. Genesis 2:23. "At last," the man exclaimed, "this one is bone from my bone and flesh from my flesh." Adam was pretty excited about this new creation. He had seen all the rest of God's creation, but something was still missing. And finally, at last, God, you understand me. You understand what I desire. We were created for relationship. Yet we live in a faceless society. What does it mean to live in a faceless society? We have all these interactions with people every day. We interact with others, all the time, from the gas station to the bank to the person at the locker next to us to the person with the desk next to us. We interact with others every day in hundreds of different ways. And yet, our relationships are often transactional. What does it mean? That means we have tasks to do. We have a job to get done. Since I moved to Pennsylvania, I discovered this wonderful place. It's called the Wawa. And, yes, thank you. And they don't make gas stations like that back in the Midwest. The Wawa is like the Taj Mahal of gas stations. So we moved to a house on Whitehall Road, and right there at the corner of Germantown Pike and Whitehall Road, there sits a Wawa. And so every morning when I come in here to the church, I take a right around the corner, and right there is the Wawa. And every night when I go home, I take a left, and I go right past the Wawa. Now, I have a certain affinity in my life for fountain drinks. You know what I'm talking about? The glasses you go in there and you put the ice in, and then you fill it up with pop or soda or Coke or whatever else you want to call it. And fountain drinks I don't know, does that translate here? So I think I was fed Dr. Pepper intravenously as a baby. My wife would probably say that, because I love fountain drinks, and I'm not going to tell you how often, but I go to the Wawa, to get a waffle. Just kidding. I go to the Wawa to get fountain drinks often. So our interactions, when I go to the Wawa, I go in there to get a fountain drink. I don't go in there to hang out with people. I don't go in there to make personal connections. I go in there to get my fountain drink and to pay for it and to get back in my car and be on my way. So our transactions are often like that. They're transactional. This is complicated by the increasingly automated society that we live in. I don't have to go inside anymore to pay for gas. I can just swipe my card. And when I go to the bank to transact my financial business, I don't have to go inside the bank. I don't even have to wait in line at the drive-through window. I can just go right to the ATM and get everything done. I don't even have to check out at the grocery store anymore with a real live person. So we go about the stuff of life with very little opportunity for meaningful, loving, caring relationships to develop. But that's not the way that the church is. That's not the way that it's meant to be. We're the kind of people who go out of our way to make relational connections with other people. They're more than just faceless to us. When Jesus met people, he was able to lovingly penetrate to their deepest need. I think of the woman at the well and Jesus' interaction with her and how she had come there to get water, and how Jesus saw right through to her deeper need. We can see there that, yes, Jesus, he was God in the flesh, but also in his humanity, he had this sensitivity to others. He was always caring and loving, and he was concerned for them. People weren't a transaction to him. They weren't an inconvenience. And as his followers, he made it clear where our focus is to be. John 13:34-35. So now I am giving you a new command. Love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. By this, all men will know that you are my disciples, if you love one another. We are to be known by our love for each other. The church, by our deep interconnectedness, redefines for the world around us what it means to exist in meaningful relationship. We're to be known by our love. In the New Testament, there's a great word for this, what it means to be deeply connected in meaningful relationship. It's called koinonia. Koinonia literally means shared participation, but another way to say that would be to say life together. Koinonia means life together, and as followers of Christ, we're called to live life together. There's a shared community that we have through our relationship with Christ and each other. This fellowship is more than just enjoying the company of other believers, though that's definitely something that we all do, but it includes a sharing of all aspects of our lives. So what does koinonia look like? What does koinonia look like? Let's go to Acts chapter 2, verses 42 through 47. Acts chapter 2. All the believers devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and to fellowship, and to sharing in meals, including the Lord's Supper, and to prayer. A deep sense of awe came over them all, and the apostles performed many miraculous signs and wonders. And all the believers met together in one place, and they shared everything that they had. They sold their property and possessions and shared the money with those in need. They worshiped together at the temple each day, met in homes for the Lord's Supper, and shared their meals with great joy and generosity, all the while praising God and enjoying the goodwill of all the people. And each day the Lord added to their number, their fellowship, those who were being saved. Isn't that an amazing picture of the community of believers? We are to share life together. People aren't faceless to us, and we shouldn't be faceless to others. Being faceless to others means that I'm never willing to open up and to go beyond surface level in my conversations. I went to Olivet Nazarene University. It's a private Christian school about an hour south of Chicago. And going there's probably about 2,000 students on campus who we walked to classes with, and we passed in the hallways, and we saw each other in the cafeteria. And so we would know each other by face, but we wouldn't know each other by name. And so we would pass each other regularly, and all these people that I didn't really know, but I knew their faces. Well, being good Christian students as we were, always felt the need to say something like, "Hey, how's it going? Hey, how are you?" And it got to this point where nobody actually took time to listen for the answer to that question. So we would just pass by, "Hey, how's it going?" And they'd be back. They would just breeze by, and it'd be the same way. "Hey, how are you?" And so you just kind of got to where you gave these pat answers. "Hey, I'm good." "Hey, I'm great." Or if you wanted to throw a twist in there because it was snowing out, "Hey, it's cold." So we just kind of had these surface level interactions. It's not realistic that we're going to have meaningful relationships with 2,000 people, but we can't remain faceless to everyone. We have to go deeper with some people. We need koinonia. We need to share life together. I got to be honest this morning, I struggle with this. I struggle with opening up and sharing the things that are going on in my life. Some of it has to do with my personality as an introvert. I'd be much more comfortable at a coffee shop with 3 or 4 of you guys than up here on the stage. But even in a smaller group, I have a hard time opening up sometimes and to share the things that I'm going through, the things that are weighing heavy on my heart. It's easier for me to share the joys and the good things that are going on, but it's harder for me to share my stuff. What do I mean by my stuff? This is probably more than you came here wanting to know this morning, but I'm just going to lay it out there for you. For years, I've struggled with being a people pleaser. I like to please people. I like to meet people's expectations and have the satisfaction of knowing that I've done that. Deep down, it says something about where I receive my value from, and we could go into that further. Now, this is a continual, ongoing struggle for me. I need to be reminded often that my value comes from God, and that I'm valuable because He tells me that I'm valuable, and that I'm one of His children. And so I need to listen to that voice and not look for the approval of people. Do you think knowing that might be important for those that I'm sharing life together with? Absolutely. And by sharing it, by opening up about that, I become known. We all have our stuff. We were created for relationship, which for followers of Christ, it's lived out in authentic Christian community. And we think back to that Acts chapter 2 passage. What a great picture of what it is to live in authentic Christian community. I don't think it's an idealistic impossibility. I think it's what we're called to as the church. So can we make a commitment to each other this morning? Can we agree not to use the word fine? Christians, we have this uncanny ability to gloss over the worst of life's circumstances with the word fine. Our friends at stuffchristianslike.net describe it this way. Even though you can see on our faces that we were up all night arguing with our husband or our wife, we will tell you things are fine. How's the new project going? It's fine. How's the family? How's your relationship with your kids? It's fine. How's your spiritual life? How's your relationship with God? It's fine. We have a way sometimes of just giving those pat answers, and we need to be willing to be open and vulnerable to become known and not just faceless. Continuing on, they say, the problem with that approach, in addition to being really dishonest, is that we're called to comfort people in the way that we've been comforted. We're called to roll up our sleeves and to show our scars and be real about them. Jesus came to heal the sick. And when we pretend that we're not sick, that we don't have our stuff, we're just lying. Life doesn't have to be fine. You're not failing if you're not fine. God is not less loving or powerful or great if you tell someone the truth. If anything, when you open up and you're honest, that allows other people to see how God is your source of strength. That's some powerful stuff here this morning. We are to share life together. Who have you given refrigerator privileges to in your life? You know, the hardest thing about moving away and leaving family and friends behind, the hardest thing is that we disconnect from relationships. And we talked about that with Facebook. We can keep up to some degree, but when it comes to living life together, you can't do that from a distance. And so we've disconnected from relationships in Indianapolis, and we've come here and everybody's new, and it's hard for us to feel like we're connected. And so Amanda and I have been talking about, like, the first week, I credit this to my wife. The first week, she's like, we have got to get in a small group. And she's absolutely right. We have got to get in a small group. We have to live life together. We've got to get connected. So we're working on that. And it's been 6 weeks, and we're still working on that. This week, we're going to work on getting in a small group. We are to share life together. Not only that, our relationships need to extend beyond the church walls. Let's look at one more passage. This morning it's from Matthew chapter 9 through 12. Matthew 9 through 12. As Jesus was walking along, he saw a man named Matthew sitting at his tax collector's booth. "Follow me and be my disciple," Jesus told him. So Matthew got up and followed him. Later, Matthew invited Jesus and his disciples to his home as dinner guests, along with many tax collectors and other disreputable sinners. But when the Pharisees saw this, they asked his disciples, "Why does your teacher eat with such scum?" When Jesus heard this, he said, "Healthy people don't need a doctor. Sick people do." Jesus made a regular habit of hanging out with sinners and the kind of people that the religious leaders of that day really couldn't stand to be around. And so he not only hung out with them and spent time with them, he invited them into his closest circle as his disciples, as people who he shared meals with. You almost get the picture that those are the kind of people that Jesus would rather be around. Remember the Zacchaeus story from Luke chapter 19. Zacchaeus, he was too short to see Jesus in the crowd, so he ran up ahead and he climbed up in this sycamore fig tree, and he saw Jesus from up high. Let's pick up that story from Luke 19. When Jesus came by, he looked up at Zacchaeus and he called him by name. "Zacchaeus," he said, "quick, come down. I must be a guest in your house today. Zacchaeus quickly climbed down and took Jesus to his house in great excitement and joy. But the people were displeased. He has gone to be the guest of a notorious sinner, they grumbled. In both of these passages, we see that the religious folk could not stand it, that Jesus was spending his time with those kinds of people. Jesus' response in Matthew 9:12, it's one of the most penetrating verses of all the Gospels. He said, "It is not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick." In other words, he was telling those Pharisees, he was saying, if you don't need me, that's fine, but these people right here, they need me. Talk about conviction. Listen to verse 13 as it continues on. Then he added, "Now go and learn the meaning of this scripture. I want you to show mercy, not offer sacrifices. For I have come to call not those who think they are righteous, but those who know they are sinners." We need to be building relationships with people who need Jesus. We need to share life with people who are faceless around us. If the church is being the church, then we're going to be building relationships with people who need Jesus. I'm not speaking about that in a general way this morning. I'm talking about me and you. We need to be doing that. Pastors, non-pastors, everybody, we need to be building relationships with people who don't know Jesus. A tendency sometimes of pastors is to say, hey, I work at the church, I spend all my time, in the scripture, and I'm praying, and I'm meeting with people. And a tendency can be for us to shy away from actually going out and building relationships with people who need Jesus. But that's as important for us as anybody. Where do we go with this morning? Where do we take this? We were created for relationship. That's lived out for those of us who are followers of Christ. That's lived out in authentic Christian community. As followers of Christ, we're not to be faceless. So it means that, first of all, I'm a part of a small group. As I said this week, Amanda and I ourselves, we're at that point where we need to get connected. We need to get a small group. Small groups are where the fleshing out of biblical community happens. And we have a lot of great small groups here at the church, and we have other additional kinds of groups. There's men's fraternity, and there's women of the word, and we have a great small groups pastor, Marquita, and if you connect with her, she will get you into a great small group. That's where we live life together in the context of a small group. Secondly, this morning, our relationships, we need to go beyond the walls of the church. Others are not to remain faceless to us. We have these great upward sports leagues here at the church. For about 5 weeks or so, until this past week we moved, but we lived in the parsonage right across the parking lot. On Saturday mornings, we would wake up and we would hear the music, and they would be announcing players' names, and we would look out the window and we'd see the kids playing football and the cheerleaders out there. And what an awesome thing it is to see that. People, many of them without a church home, many of them without a connection to church or to Jesus. So we have all these upward leagues. We have basketball. We're going to need coaches for basketball coming up. But the reason we want people in our church to coach those teams is because we want people in our church to be making connections. We want to make a connection with those in our community. That's a great opportunity. Our second Sunday here, we were privileged to be able to be a part of Be the Church Sunday. And in fact, I was up on the roof that whole weekend. We did this whole roofing project at the Chambers Center. And so, any of you guys in here that were on the roof in here today? All right, great. We had some great times. It was a great way to get to know people my second week here. And but it was great seeing Be the Church Sunday and seeing all these groups going out and making a difference. And some of those things were more task-oriented, and some of them were more relationship-oriented. But no matter what it was us building relationship with others for Jesus' sake, so that we could build a relationship and point them to Him. This is more about being than it is about doing. We have these everyday interactions, these hundreds of interactions we've been talking about. So when I go to the Wawa, I believe that